Hey everyone, welcome to Thriving Marriage with Mark
and Bethany.
This is our weekly discussion of marriage and family in the Christian life. And today we want to talk about marriage problems and at what point do you talk to someone about marriage problems and to whom?
Yeah.
So really important to think through at what point do I say something? And then when it's time to say something, who do I talk to?
Yeah.
Because you can really err on either side of this problem. On the one hand, you could talk with too many people about too many problems.
Right.
Or on the other hand, you could just put things under the rug, sweep them under the rug, talk to too few people about your problems.
Right. Yeah, this would be so great to identify like as early on in your marriage as possible. But if you're years in, you can always make the change. But to know when there's a big issue, a small issue, where do I go? Who do I talk to? How do I deal with it? That's good to think through because issues are going to come up. And, you know, you don't want to be like that teenage girl just sending a text to all her girlfriends because she's upset with her mom about something. You don't want to do that with your spouse. You don't want to just share it with everyone.
Yeah.
But then
just post it. Just post it on social media. Let the world know.
Just blast it out there. Yeah.
Or sit on it for 5 years and then, you know, show up with a laundry list of things that you've been mad about forever.
Yikes. Yeah.
So there are extreme ways to err, and we want to propose kind of an approach to saying something when the time is right to the right person. And this is going to require wisdom and, you know, a case-by-case decision. But we think there's some principles that we can establish up front. And so the first principle is to share when you need help. This is really profound. But let me explain what I mean by that.
Yeah.
Share when you need help. So I laugh because it's a simple sentence, but it really, I think there's a lot there in the sense that it's saying you shouldn't share if you don't actually need help. So only share when you need it.
Yeah.
And so what constitutes a need? And that's maybe complicated to define and it depends on each person. But look, if you are able to work through this and think through this and pray through this and forgive and exercise, you know, godliness.
Yeah.
That's the right thing. You don't need to bring anyone else in.
Yes. It's better if you don't. Yeah, it's better if you can handle the issues. If there's something between you and me, I can go to the Lord. I can spend some time in prayer. I can work on my part. I can talk to you about it. We are trying to resolve this issue. I don't need my girlfriends. I don't need anyone else to be a part of it. It's going to be better if it's just the two of us because then more ears and minds aren't involved in getting perspectives and checking in. It can
and
muddy
making
the problem.
Issue bigger than it needs to be and a
drama.
Number of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think this is really important because we're just acknowledging there are going to be times when your spouse does something that bothers you or that constitutes a problem in your relationship. And you're going to have to forgive them. You're going to have to process through that. You're going to have to work through that. And this is something that is going to face your marriage this year, this month.
Right.
Like this season.
Yeah. Yeah. But
And-
you need to put the work into trying to get through it in a godly way. Like
Sure.
you're talking about with the forgiveness, with the restoration.
Yeah, and there are some people that are just a lot more independent than, and there are others that are just a lot more dependent by nature. And so depending on where you fall on that spectrum might indicate whether you're the kind of person that shares too much with too many people or shares too little with too few people. And so maybe know that about yourself.
Yeah.
Are you a highly dependent person, a clingy person, and you feel like you need to just get other people's approval on everything?
Right.
Well, maybe pause before you go and talk to someone about the next marriage problem.
Yeah.
If you're a super independent person and
You're like, I got this, no big deal,
Yeah.
I can handle it. Yeah. You might be the type of person who just lets things pile up, maybe when you should get some help.
Yeah. And maybe to that person we could add that, you know, don't let pride stop you from getting help when you need it. You might think, I've got this. I don't need any help. I don't need anyone else to know about this. I'm going to figure this out on my own. Okay, well, if you keep saying that and it keeps being a problem, then at some point you have to acknowledge I need help here.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that keeps people from maybe going to a counselor or going to a trusted godly person and saying there's an issue, because it's like, I don't want to seem like I can't handle it. And, that's a huge temptation. Or we don't want to seem like we can't figure out this marriage thing. It's like, I've got this, and the dependence is on you. So I think that if you have that tendency, it's true. I might have that tendency of like, I got this, I can handle this, no big deal, So I think I could err on the side of I don't need help because I want to get through it myself. I want to figure it out.
And I think you also need to be careful, you meaning not just you,
The
but
you.
all people.
The you, yeah.
To not let fear prevent you from getting help when
Right.
you need it. It
Right.
could be that it's not pride that's keeping you back. It could very well be the case that you're afraid of what the person might think of you or what might happen as a result. Maybe you're embarrassed.
Yeah.
You might just be sinfully motivated by fear and just sit on your problems.
Yeah, and I've seen this with somebody who wants to present their family as the picture perfect family where everything's going well and everything's great, and you'll find out later on there's major issues, underlying issues, and they've just really wanted to appear in a certain way. And they've been afraid to come out and say, you know what, everything isn't right. I don't want to go to someone and have to admit, like, there's a big problem here and I need the help. It's that fear that can definitely keep your mouth shut about something that maybe you do need the assistance of a godly person or the body of Christ so we can come alongside one another. So, yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And, we need to help each other in our relationship, but there are going to be moments maybe in our relationship where we need the help of someone else to just speak wisdom into our situation, to offer guidance, to offer counsel. It's wise for us to do so.
Yeah.
And we really should seek out the counsel of other people at a point when we need it. And that point really should be before it escalates into a bigger blow up major situation.
Yeah.
And I just add that on because there are often instances where people wait and wait and wait
Yeah.
to share something until it explodes.
Right.
And then it's like, all right, well, before it was maybe counseling or just help about one minor issue, but now it is a major deal.
Yeah.
And at that point, people are like, all right, I need help.
Yeah. It's like we've gone so far. Yeah.
And it's true. You need help at that point, and you should go get help. But I think maybe we're trying to say there could be a couple steps before the blow-up situation
Right.
where you could acknowledge, we need some help here.
Yeah, we need an outside perspective to help us. Yeah, that's so good.
So I don't know how well that answers the question. It's kind of ambiguous. We said, when do you talk to someone? And our answer so far is when you need it,
Yeah.
when you need help.
Yeah.
So
I think there's one more element to it, maybe
Okay.
that helps, is I think, too, we want to make sure before we reach out to other people that we have put in the effort ourselves first. And that's what I see is I'll see a wife reaching out, I've got some issue with my husband, and my question is like, so what have you been doing about it? And it's kind of like, oh, have you been praying about this, or have you been memorizing scripture about your part of the problem? Have you had a really good conversation? And it's often no, and no. And it's like, so they see there's an issue, but they haven't really put in the effort first. And I think to then go and include me, I'm thinking, well, it sounds like you.
Try again.
Yeah. Come back if you've tried these things. Because often if you go to the Word and you're reading about this issue and you're asking God to show you guidance, you're praying, then you're talking to your spouse, when you're calm and you've had this time of like preparing your heart, then I think that the issues may be resolved easier if you're prepared, if you've put in the effort. If you've just said, I don't like this, what should I do? Well, I'm not sure that that's the right time to go just tell a friend or any listening ear.
Yeah, and that really leads into the next point, which is, who do you talk to? Is it any listening ear? Or,
That's what the world would say.
We want to suggest that you should talk to someone who can help you. So really complex
These are
advice.
Deep points that we want you to grab onto.
Get help when you need it.
Uh-huh.
With someone who can
will
help.
Yeah, but we can define that. I like the simplicity because we can define it more.
Yeah. So who can help?
Well, I almost think of who can't help first, right? Any listening ear, any random person, any text conversation, I would say is probably not the best way to just share. So maybe a text to someone, let's talk about this later, but it's not that you're just spreading out this problem amongst anyone. I would also say family, I think, is not I don't know. I mean, for me, I think sometimes my parents may not be the best people because they're on my side. I can do no wrong in their minds. And so I don't know if I need to go to my mom or my dad and say, what would you do about this in our marriage? I don't really know that that's the best way. I mean, maybe it could be. It depends on your parents. But I think often that might be difficult. So those are maybe the who might not be helpful. So who would be helpful?
Well, and maybe before we answer that, I think it's important to say that your motive matters.
Yes.
And when you go to talk to someone, whether it's family or whoever,
right.
Someone who can help, your motivation in talking to that person really will answer the question of whether or not it's going to help solve the problem.
Yeah.
If your motivation is to just
unload,
dirty laundry and unload or just vent or whatever, guess what? You're not talking to them in an effort to get help.
Right.
You're talking to them in an effort to feel better.
Yeah.
By either just venting or boosting yourself because you're putting your spouse down or whatever.
Getting people on your side. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's not the recipe for getting help.
Yeah.
So talk to someone who can point you to God's word.
Right.
Point to someone who is willing to show you where you're wrong. Mm-hmm. Point to someone who cares about you and is going to follow up with you and see it through to the end.
Yeah, that second one's hard. Go to someone who will say to you, what's your problem in this issue? That's a hard one, but such a good one. Because it's so tempting to think, there's a problem, it's all on him. Look, he's the one doing the wrong thing. But to have some godly person in your life who can say, how are you involved? And to really ask the questions of what's your problem? What's your part? That's so good because then you are not just shifting all the blame to somebody else, but you're actually going to work through it.
Right. And I usually ask that question in marriage counseling in the first session, every time.
Yeah.
Just all right, so what are the problems? And then I will usually follow up and for clarification and say, well, what are the problems that you can admit to? Yeah. What are the ways you have contributed to the problem?
Right.
Because you just gave me a long list of all the things that the other person's done. That's not the list I'm interested in. I want to hear the list of the things that you've done.
So smart. Yeah.
I try. Yeah. And I didn't know your parents thought so little of me.
No, they don't. It's not that. It's just I know, I am, the best.
I think you're totally right. You are the best in the whole world.
In their minds.
But in their minds, yeah.
Yeah.
And so it depends. We've talked about this at a really general level. If it's a problem that you have with me, then you're right. Your parent, you probably shouldn't go to them.
Right.
Because there's an element of even reputation to keep in mind.
For sure.
But if it's a problem that maybe there's a conflict that we're having, there's a mutual problem among us, and it's not just some thing that I'm doing that's bothering you.
Right.
It could very well be the case that your parents could offer wise counsel.
Yes, they have.
And then, or, really ideally, a pastor at your church or a biblical counselor
ministry leader,
a friend who loves the Lord and who loves you. And, man, just talk to that person.
Right.
And start the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah, and I just think a disclaimer in this, which is so good, is just to be careful that it doesn't turn to gossip or is gossip when you're going to someone for help or multiple people at that point. And that it's not something that you're just trying to slander or make your spouse look bad or put them down. I think that's just something to be careful of because I know it happens regularly.
How do you know when it's gossip?
When you're talking about someone else behind their back in a negative way, they've got no way to stand up for themselves. You're just throwing them down, saying it's all their fault, and there's nothing constructive to be moving forward.
Right.
I think there's that kind of distinction there.
Yeah, and that's where we can come back to our two guiding principles here.
Yes, yeah.
We're going to defend them. One is talk to someone when you need help.
Right.
And then two, talk to someone who can help.
For sure.
And that is really open-ended, but it also limits, it rules out a lot of mistakes you can make along the way.
Yeah, that's good. All right, well, thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
All right, see ya.